trust me?
We're going to go ahead and move on to the next part of my stream, which is my review for The Last of Us. Episode 9, chat, the season 1 finale. You know, like I've been saying for, quite some time, this has been a really surprising journey for me. As you guys know, like I had a lot of misgivings about this series going in. It's like, yes, despite the talent, behind the camera, in front of the camera, I was just like, I was like, I don't really need this. The Last of Us 1 is one of my favorite games of all time. I love the Last of Us series. I really enjoyed The Last of Us Part 2 as well. But Last of Us 1, it was like, yeah, that's one of my favorite games of the 2010s. This might have been my second or third favorite game of that decade. I love that story of, between, Joel and Ellie. I just didn't see the need for adaptation other than the fact that it's like, well, people who don't play the game, and who wouldn't necessarily watch the cutscenes online, it's for that. I'm like, that's fine. It's just not for me. However, going into it and watching it and all the way through, I'm walking away, being really pleasantly surprised. And I'm always happy to eat crow, always happy to eat a big slice of humble pie, Chad. No doubt about that. And I have liked a lot of what they've done in this show. I've had a few criticisms, but what they've been able to add, I think, has been pretty special. And it's been a very, fun, surprising, sad, and heartfelt journey, watching this show, and I'm excited to see it continue on later on. But for this particular episode, I thought this was a very good finale, chat. I liked how it started because, again, I think surprisingly, because when you often think about video game adaptations, I think the thing that fans often dislike, you can point to a whole bunch of them, Uncharted or Resident Evil, some of the lesser ones, the fact that they seem adamant about not adapting the actual storylines, about including stuff that came from nowhere. It just seems to be the director or writer just, hey, we have the brand, we got the name, we got the logo and shit, but this we want to tell this story. Nothing to do with the original stuff. One of the things that I've really liked about this series is how they've added so much to it, like new stuff. They've expanded on the characters, on the world, on the lore, and I mean, we've gotten some amazing episodes because of that. Like even just like explaining the idea of this infection, including stuff from like the 1960s, like scenes from there, and having these experts talk about the idea of a fungus pandemic. I think that's really cool. Or like in the case of episode 3, where they make major changes to the character of Bill, and we actually see the character of Frank alive, and they tell that really nice self-contained story, which is beautiful. This beautiful love story that takes place over the course of like 20 years in this, horrible apocalyptic situation. And there's some other things like how different places around the world reacted to this horrible and tragic event. Like all of that, I was like, wow, I'm really digging a lot what they have here. And they've done it here again in this episode, chap, where, this episode starts where we see Ellie's mom, played by Ashley Johnson. So we knew that we were going to get a number of the original actors from The Last of Us video games in the series. Last episode, obviously, we had Troy Baker return. Of course, he played Joel in the games, and he played a character that was a part of David's community and cult. His character's name was James, I believe. And it was great to see him there. And here, I think, Ashley Johnson, who I've always liked as an actress. We see her pop up in tons of stuff. She's a mocap artist. She's a voice actress, chat. People who are fans of Dungeons & Dragons probably best know her from Critical Role, where she plays in that. She voices multiple characters in Legend of Vox Machina, Pike Trickfoot, and she showed up in the Avengers as well. She had the original Avengers movie. So I've always known she was a talented actress, and of course, probably her most iconic performance was playing as Ellie. But I thought it was really nice, and a really nice touch. They had her playing Ellie's mom here, and I like how it's a cold opening where you're just seeing this pregnant woman, and she's super preggo, chat, and it's just like so preggo that baby's about to come out any fucking second. The snap of the fingers, that thing will just shoot out, just about to front poop out the baby, and we see her in some pretty trepidatious situations, but also dealing with the fact that she's about to blow. And one that's just like, terrifying to see. It's like probably the worst situation for any character, especially one who's about to give birth, to be in. and she's being chased by little monsters in the apocalypse chat. I love the opening with her, and I thought she did a great job. And I also liked that we were provided with more depth and context for the character of Marlene, who we know, for those that don't know, she was introduced obviously in the first episode. She's the leader of the Fireflies in the Boston QZ, and she's the one that sends originally Joel and Tess and Ellie on this mission to take her from point A to point B, get her from here to get her all the way over here, Salt Lake City, right? You know, we now understand more of her relationship with Ellie's mom. And so they expand on her character. And as things, you know, transpire, you know, throughout this episode, we see her return again. We see a younger version of her in the beginning. And then obviously how many years later, I guess Ellie's supposed to be like 13, 14 years old, something like that. You know, we see her now, and now we kind of understand how difficult it is for her to make certain decisions based on Ellie. And I really like that. You know, it added something that the game originally didn't have. It's like, well, yeah, we know that Marlene knew Ellie's mom, but outside of that was it. We were told that information. We never played a section with Ellie's mom. We never like had a flashback from Marlene. So they had that, and I was like, yeah, this means more for this character. And I really like that. Along with that, chat, you know, we also see Pedro Pascal as Joel, just trying to be the best dad possible, you know, in this episode. You know, despite how tragic and traumatic this episode is, like outside of the stuff of Ashley Johnson, which I thought was great. We then cut back to, you know, the modern stuff with them, and he's just like, hey, I got Chef Boyardee. I got Boggle. You could beat me in Boggle. I mean, I loved all like those scenes in which Joel's like trying to be, because, you know, we've seen him be hardened. We've seen him not want to get attached to the character of Ellie, but, you know, softening over time. Yes, he does in the games. And I just really like seeing like, you know, happy Joel trying to be like a good dad to her. And, you know, at the same time, we see Ellie, of course, played by Bella Ramsey, who's, you know, really grown into this role. I think, you know, when it originally started out, like the first episode, I think it did a disservice because there just wasn't a lot for her to do. But over time, and especially the last several episodes and everything with, you know, Henry and Sam, and then when it was really focused on her most recently in the penultimate episode 8 with David, she is fantastic. And we see her in a place where she is traumatized. She's been beaten down. She's distant based on everything that she went through, and Joel's trying to open up to her more. And we got, you know, some, for those who play the games, you know, some really touching moments, some like just really just heartfelt scenes between the two of them experiencing something that only a father and daughter would love to experience with each other. And I thought how they handled all that was great. And we also learned more about Joel. Now, again, I don't recall this certain element they bring up in regards to like Joel's deafness in the games. Like, I don't think that's a new thing. It's something that they added to the show. I don't believe like Joel suffers from any type of deafness. And so they have a really meaningful conversation here that I thought was great. And I think Ellie, even more so, begins to trust Joel because of how he's laying his entire heart bare in this episode. And he admits something to her that he probably never wanted to admit to anyone else, or probably hasn't, outside of, you know, maybe his brother, who may know or may not know. I really liked all that. I thought that was great. And at the same time, you know, the last third of this episode, and this has been kind of a critique I've had of the series. One of my big critiques is like they have definitely been hiding Joel's brutality and his ferocity and his cruelty. And I think it's because they were kind of building to a certain moment, and it happens here. Though we saw more of that episode 8, which I did like, popping off kneecaps and stuff. But we see him do horrible things, and I liked how they handled that. You know, I thought they could have gone even further, matter of fact, because in the way in which I play the game, Chad, I mean, those who've seen my streams, all I'll say is there's a hospital room and there's some doctors there. And all I can tell you, Chad, I made sure there was not a living fucking soul in that room afterwards. But how they still handled a lot of that situation, I thought was quite good. And Pedro Pascal's performance, especially there, he just has this. It's funny because he goes from being this, hey, you want to, Chef Boyardee, you want to beat me in Boggle, huh? It'd be fun. Board games, Connect 4, to just being dead-eyed. To just, like, just no emotion whatsoever. I really like that, the dichotomy of that. Just the stark contrast from the start of this episode to the beginning of this episode. I thought that was great. I thought they handled that really, really well. And then up until the last beat, when those characters have a conversation, with each other, and it sets up something big for season 2, something that is going to be tragic, and it's going to basically create a wedge between two characters. I don't want to say too much, obviously, for those that haven't seen this series. But, it's going to set up a lot of cool things, which is going to be covered. Obviously, it's going to be covering a lot of the events of Last of Us Season 2. Part of me would like to actually see them maybe do an in-between season. But I guess that's not the case. I think Neil Druckmann, who is both the co-creator of the Last of Us series, and obviously he's worked on this show, he's already confirmed that they're adapting Last of Us Part 2. And apparently they're not making any specific changes, which I'm like, hey, no, I understand. I get it, But yeah, going forward, I am looking forward to season 2. I'm very curious to see what the mainstream reaction to season 2 is, just because of what the reaction was to The Last of Us Part 2. I really enjoyed the game. I didn't have any issues with the narrative personally. If any issues I have with that game is maybe the pacing and some innocuous tasks which I felt like weren't needed. And I was like, you could have streamlined this. Like, that was my big criticism of the game. I think it was pacing and unnecessary tasks. I was like, I don't need to fucking take the cable and go over here with the cable and throw over the fence and plug it in and go back and put the press. It's like, I don't need that puzzle. Come on, let me just press the button. That's what I need to do. So, but I am curious to see what the reaction is going to be. But yeah, Chad, overall, again, I won't say too much because there's so many big things that happens in this episode, but from start to finish, I thought it was great. I thought they ended the season very strong, and the performances across the board, from Ashley Johnson to Bella Ramsey to certainly Pedro Pascal, were incredible. I think there's going to be a number of accolades the series will receive, at least be nominated for. Definitely for, obviously, Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey, and probably also for Nick Offerman and his co-actor, the actor who played Frank, whose name escapes me at the top of my head. But yeah, Chad, for someone who had a lot of misgivings, who didn't want this, I am very pleasantly surprised. I think they've done a great job, and I'm looking forward to the future season 2. And again, there are no more excuses, okay? I'm tired of it for bad video game adaptations, all right? You have plenty of examples, even long before The Last of Us came around, plenty of examples of fantastic video game adaptations, from The Last of Us to Arcane to Castlevania. Hell, even Sonic. The Sonic films are a joke. Detective Pikachu is really fun. So it's like, no more of this half-ass bullshit, all right? I don't want no more of this stuff like Uncharted or Mortal Kombat or, what have you, Resident Evil. It's like, stop it, all right? Because people are going to hold you higher, to a higher standard, as they should. And so, Last of Us, yeah, it's one of the best video game adaptations of all time. Maybe not necessarily my favorite, but it's very good. It's very good. I mean, for the entire series itself, I was very impressed. I mean, yeah, I would give it. I think this is a full price. This is a full price. I think it's worth watching. I think people who have certainly never played the game are going to get a lot out of this. And people who have played the game, I think you might walk away from it like I did, being impressed what they added. Maybe having a few criticisms, along the way. But overall, I think you're going to like it. So that's just my thoughts on The Last of Us, Chad. Season 1, episode 9, and I guess of the series itself. What about you guys? How did you feel about Last of Us episode 9? Again, no spoilers, of course, and just the series itself. I hope everyone enjoyed the film review, and I want to take the time to tell you about the movie of the week, a film that I really enjoy and one that I think you will too. This week's movie is Scream, just in time for the release of Scream 6. Scream is directed by Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson. A year after the murder of her mother, a teenage girl is terrorized by a killer who targets the girl and her friends by using horror films as part of a deadly game. If anyone is interested in purchasing this fantastic film, please make use of the Amazon affiliate link below in the video description. Your subsequent purchase of the film not only earns me a helpful commission, but any purchase you may make after clicking on the link itself for 24 hours would help earn me additional commissions as well. Doesn't matter if it's a Blu-ray, a video game, a pair of socks, or a washing machine, everything within 24 hours of that click can really help the channel. So go ahead and check out the film, enjoy browsing and shopping.